Happy
Happy
New
New Year,
Year,
Safehouse.
Safehouse. Today, we're going to be discussing, is marriage still worth it in 2026?
Good question.
If you got this question or you know some people that are asking this question, stay tuned and we're going to discuss this. We'll be right back. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Safehouse.
It's 2026
Yes, it
and we are
is.
still in the building.
Yes, we are. That's amazing.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Like how long we been doing this?
We've been doing this for a while. This is our
Yeah.
season 4,
Yeah.
so we're 8 episodes into season 4. We've had a
Yeah.
chance to interview some really interesting couples, and it's still coming. Our list of people
Yeah.
coming on the show,
We've
is
had a few
growing.
people who wanted to come on.
Yeah, we've had a few
A few
requests.
requests.
Yeah, a few requests of some folks to come on the show.
So
So it has been good, and it will continue to be good, and we'll continue to bring content to you because we love you and we feel impassioned about the topic
Yes.
of relationships and eventually marriage. So like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so that you can be notified on when we publish new content. So now let's get into this. Is marriage worth it in 2026?
that's a really good question. Like I said, we're heading into our 32nd year. And so, of course, my answer would be yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, that marriage is still worth it. Now, if you'd asked me that, maybe between years 1 and 6, I'd have been like,
Right. Year 2, be like,
no,
nah, this is
it's not worth it, because it was hard. But like I said, I think it's a good question because I think, we were talking about this. Some of the trends that we're seeing
Yeah.
is that we're seeing divorce,
Yeah.
obviously, for people who are married. And we're seeing for the singles, we're seeing that they're not in a rush to get married.
Yeah.
They're
And
just
it's funny with the divorce, you have people that get divorced and then once everything's settled, they're like, you know what? I'm not going back there again, right?
Yeah.
They'll choose to remain single even after the divorce. I know some of that's trauma-based, right? It's like, okay, I just went through a bad situation. Why do I want to put myself through it? But they close themselves off to the whole potential of being with someone else for life, right?
Why do you think that is, though?
It's wild. I was doing my doom scrolling on social media the other day.
Is doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling. We all do it. Do the doom scrolling. Y'all got to tell me how to get the algorithm to stop sending me funeral stuff.
Right. Because that's all he's been watching.
I get dead people stuff.
Oh my God.
All the time on my feed. People's funerals, people's kissing body. I just don't want to see that stuff. So I got to figure out how to get that out of my feed. I don't know what funeral video I watched but anyway, I digress. We're not talking about funerals.
Right. We're talking about life.
We're talking about dead relationships. We're trying to get back to live again. So
exactly.
Sorry for the digression. But I was scrolling and I ran into this message where this guy had basically, he was declaring his liberation, right? So just got out of he didn't just get out of a relationship. He was divorced. And he was giving his testimony of, I was divorced. He admitted, hey, my relationship failed because I failed. I failed as a husband. I failed as a this, probably had some substance problems in there. All these issues were him issues. Now he's gotten himself together. He's kind of rebooted, successful in business, successful in life, and he's living his life. And he just declared, well, I'd never get married again. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. It's just like, wait a minute. You were in a relationship that failed, admittedly by you, but yet you're saying, I don't want to get back into one again, right? Even though you've addressed the issues that you felt you had that caused your relationship to fail. So I don't know if there's an exact answer, but I know there's a whole bunch of reasons that may cause people to not reconsider.
That's really interesting because I do feel like when some people finally get themselves together, they don't want to. Sometimes it could just be a fear of losing yourself again. Because marriage does involve, investing in the other person. And sometimes when you get married, some people feel like they have to morph into a
Something
person
else.
that they're not, just to appease the other person. And so I can just imagine that if he spent all of this time working on himself,
Yeah.
that he doesn't, he wants to kind of just make sure that he stays that person. He obviously loves the person that he is now.
But why do we do that? Who was it? Chris Rock that made that joke a long time ago. When you're dating somebody, you're not dating them, you're dating their representative.
Right.
Right. But
Yeah.
but why do we do that? We create this representative, right, that we send out to date people. That person causes that other person to fall in love, right? And then at some point, we can't maintain that representative, right? We can't maintain this facade, and it eventually wears out, and then the real us starts to emerge. And what I sometimes see is that once that real person emerges, that person becomes frustrated with having to keep up this facade that they created in order to gain the person.
But I think sometimes too, that's why we're asking the question, does, why marriage matters, does it still matter? Because if I'm putting up a facade, then we could just date. And I don't never have to really show you who I am. Because we're not in it for forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at any point, because marriage kind of connects you in a different way. People always say, well, we've been living together for 10 years and, why get married? Because marriage does connect you in a completely different way. And so, the idea, I'm not saying that people who live together for a long time have the idea in the back of their minds, like, okay, I'm going to
live together. Yeah.
I can, or not just live together, but at any point I can leave.
Yeah.
It's just easier to leave when you haven't signed on the dotted line.
This is true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying that could be some of the reasons. Like even for him, like you said, the person who, Facebook who said that, like I said, nobody really knows like why. But I think those are the questions that people are asking themselves, whether you're single or you're married, so I feel like when we start talking about, like why people are waiting, one of the things is cultural shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our
culture
this culture
so
is
completely different from like think about it, like when our parents got married, in the 50s and the 60s. I mean, it's in 2025. I mean, marriage looks completely different.
And it's so funny you mentioned culture, because it's really wild. Is it better? Is it worse? I don't know, right? Because there are studies out there that talk about marriage rates and marriage rates in the African American community or whatever community, right? And in the 50s and 60s, marriage rates were in the 80s and 90s,
they were,
right?
Yeah.
And I think it had dropped to like 80 or something, and people thought it was a crisis. It was like, okay, people are not getting married at a high rate. And today, I think the marriage rate is now like in the 30s. It's very, very low. But the other phenomenon that you observe from those eras is that, wives, women, people would remain in relationships despite being completely unfunctional, right? Yeah. So you'd have, men and once again, I'm speaking from my own experience because I have men like this in my family, right? You have men that were married to a woman for 40 years, right? But they had a whole other family, right, that they had with some other young lady. Some were even bold enough to bring the baby home to have the main wife raise I mean, it was really, really wild. Or even just, they stayed married, but the husband was a serial philanderer, or both partners were philanderers, right? You hear about these stories of women that after, the wife gets sick or something like that, and they find out that the kid wasn't his. Right. Right. Yeah. So I think there was this sort of institution of marriage and acceptance of complete dysfunction. Right.
That's what I was going to say, because even then it was acceptable. Yeah, it's still, marriage to them still mattered. Yeah. It wasn't like, oh, now we're going to get a divorce because of all of this dysfunctional activity. Yeah. It was okay. Now in 2026, yeah, that's completely unacceptable.
Papa don't take no mess. Mama don't take no mess, right?
Absolutely. As soon as I think if I'm dating you and you looking kind of shady, I'm like, yeah, you're.
But are we hypersensitive too? I mean, do you
I
think?
Agree with that.
Because once again, let's look back at our early selves, right? Yeah. When we first got married, I was probably not the picture of an ideal husband, right? You know, I'll be humble enough to admit I was not, right? So it's like, I didn't check none of the boxes, right? You know what I mean? No, I didn't, right? I didn't check none of the boxes.
I'm just going to let you talk about yourself. I'm not going to amen it or nothing.
I didn't check none of the boxes. I didn't make enough money. I'm like, on a really good day, I'm like 5'10" and a half, maybe. If I'm not 6 feet tall, right? Always been a little bit heavier, right? I'm, a handsome big guy, but whatever, but no, I'm not.
He is a handsome big guy.
I'm not. I was not that guy, right? I was not, making six figures. I was not doing all these things. Still not super romantic, super spiritual. None of those things, right? And so if you had a checklist at the time, it'd have been a big F, right?
Yeah.
My report card would have been a fail,
Yeah, my return and investment.
Yeah. No. If you were evaluating a stock, it's like, I'm not investing in that stock, right?
I'm not investing.
It's not. But people look at our relationship now, 30-some years later, and they're like, oh man, y'all are the perfect this, and y'all got it this, and it's just like, no, that was built up over time.
But you know what?
You know
what I'm going to say? He was like the Amazon stock. Like when Amazon first started, nobody could have ever imagined that Amazon would be what it is today.
You're very kind.
Amazon remember they just was selling books.
They were selling books, and if anybody looks back at the original Amazon was Jeff Bezos if you look back, you can search on it on Google, right? Jeff Bezos was selling books with like a fold-out table he had gotten from Sam's Club, and he had a bunch of stuff stacked up behind him. That's what Amazon started out
that was my
right? Man. And today it's like the world's largest seller of everything, right? Including all this equipment we're using. Yeah. But no, it's we've lost the potential.
Right. And to me, that's the cultural shift.
Yeah.
Because like you said, our men and women today looking at potential, or do they want the person to already have the potential?
Yeah.
They want the person to show up perfect.
They do. I really think they do. They want the person to show up.
Yeah.
If not perfect, somewhat perfect, right?
And two, like you said, it's when you talked about women, like you said, when you talk about the 50s and the 60s, women didn't really work like that.
That's true. They weren't. Now women have
work,
careers.
They have careers.
Yeah.
They're holding off on having babies.
Yeah.
So everything has changed, and so now it's like there's a new dynamic coming to the table when you start talking about marriage. And I think it's the same thing too for men. Men are like, okay, I have myself together. Now they're asking the question of, okay, what are you bringing to the table?
Yeah.
I may not be the guy who wants to take care of you.
I
want to know if we're partners in this,
that we're sharing it,
that we're sharing. Whatever it is that we're going to do. If we're going to grow together, what does that look like for us? And I'm not mad at men for asking that question.
But
that's different. We weren't asking that question in the with the baby boomers. The baby boomers weren't asking.
Yeah, Gen X, the early part of we're that early Gen X, right? The Gen Xers weren't asking that either, right? You just kind of had this understanding. I know I watched my dad be the wage earner in the house, right? So that's the model I grew up on. It's like, okay, you got to be the guy that earns the wage, and now it's not so much. So culture has shifted, right? And culture has devalued marriage to some degree. Are there other sort of things that we've seen that kind of drive why people don't want to get married anymore?
I think too, it's a fear of divorce.
Yeah.
It's funny because when we were getting ready to get married, my parents had been married for over 25 years.
Yeah.
But then they were like, we're not going to be together anymore.
Yeah. Like right in the middle of us. Yeah.
It was 3 months before we're getting ready to get married. And in my mind, I'm like, I've based my whole idea of marriage on you guys.
That was wild. Yeah.
And so, I mean, at that point too, I was like, well, I'm in it now. I didn't really think about I had never thought about the fear of divorce because for all of those years, my parents had the idea of divorce had just never dawned on me.
Right.
Even though, I had seen couples get divorced.
Right.
But like I said, living in a household where it was taking place, I'm like, I can understand how people would delay
Yeah.
getting married, be like, nope, nobody in my family stays married, you know. So yeah, I'm not getting married.
And I had the opposite experience. So now my parents didn't get divorced, right? They were
Hmm.
together up until my father passed away. But what I observed was my mom and dad were not girlfriend and boyfriend, right?
Hmm.
It's I didn't observe them being any public displays of affection. My concept of them were like roommates, partners, maintaining a house.
Hmm.
I never saw them as lovers.
Oh wow, yeah.
And so, this whole idea of getting married to somebody to just, sort of support them, cohabitate with them. My mom was a firecracker, right? So she ran the house, right? And so, my dad would get fussed at a lot. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so I'm like, what's the value of signing up for that? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
I
like
mean, no, that's real talk, like you
it's
said,
like
because if
you know
that's what you see,
like,
do I want to be committed to that?
do I want to be committed to that for my life?
Right,
Right?
because forever is a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah, forever's a line. That's
Yeah.
how long, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. So it's like, okay, I want to be with somebody who my only responsibility is to pay for everything, to get yelled at, to go do stuff, lift and tote stuff when you need it, right? And once again, I never observed them as lovers, right? I
Hmm.
didn't, and I knew my mom loved my dad because once again, when he died, she showed emotion.
Hmm.
But heck, this is a wild story. I remember my mom went out of town once, and me and dad were at the house there together, and then she was coming back, right? And we went to the station to pick her up.
Hmm.
And he got dressed up and he wore his cologne and whatever have you. And, he was looking pretty sharp, right? He was looking so sharp that there was other ladies looking at him, right? And I noticed that. I was like, they checking out my dad. My dad's kind of old, but they checking him out. Um, and when we got there and picked up my mom, she had no reaction.
Oh wow.
There was no nothing, right? And it was almost like a ridicule, like, why'd you do all that, right? It was really wild. And I didn't note it because I just thought that's how my mom was. But once again, when you're setting a precedent or setting a standard for what love, affection, and relationship is like, once again, why would I sign up
Hmm.
for that? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, why did you sign up for it?
So why did I sign up for it? I could tell you that, after I got older, obviously I started to see healthier relationships. But I'd reached a point in my life too where I started to think, man, I'm gonna get old. And me doing, the college frat thing, there's only so many parties you could do. You could step around
That's
and
true.
stroll around, right? There's only so many hop shows you can go to, and there's only so many years that the bros are going to be there because they go start getting married. And I just decided, a young fool eventually turns into an old fool, right? So I just need to stop being foolish and being serious about life, right? And in terms of the people that had a positive influence on my life, not just for loving me, but just was a positive person. You were there, right? And so, I was like, whether I 100% agree or not, this is the right move, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah,
So at that point in your life, you felt like it was worth taking a risk
it was worth
on
taking a risk.
marriage,
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah,
saying, you know what, I want to spend the rest of my life
yeah.
with this beautiful, amazing,
Who keeps
fascinating
her
woman.
lovely youthful
Yes.
looks, That's the other thing too. You look at the mom, and if the mom looks young, the daughters are always going to look young. And in fact, you used to win all they couldn't guess your age contests, right? They always
Right.
thought you was way younger than you were. I'm like, okay. So you see, I'm gray and she's not.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I got gray, but not as much as he does, obviously. Obviously.
but yeah, that's why. I mean, so
I also think another reason why people are waiting, or like why people are like, at least this generation,
yeah,
because like I said, and when I say this generation, I think about our kids.
yeah, yeah,
Like they're young,
yeah.
but neither one of them have like marriage on the radar.
Yeah,
It's
no
like,
prospects, no nothing,
right.
right? Yeah,
And I'm only saying that because, so when we talk about why I wanted to get married, I just thought that was just the natural progression of things.
Okay.
You go to school, I had just graduated, and so I'm like, okay, what do I do next?
Right. Get a mate, right? Then
right. You get married.
Yeah,
The idea of just like perpetually dating.
Right.
I just didn't think that was the way to go. And I'm not saying that was the right reason to want to get married.
Right.
But I'm just saying that in my mind, that was just what I thought, was that was just the natural progression of life. You get married, then you have kids, but then nobody wrote a book on what do you do when the kids grow up. Yeah. And now it's just you and this person again.
Nobody writes a book on what to expect, right? Nobody writes a book on how you should enter into that. And that's the reason why we have Safehouse, right?
Yeah.
Look, audience, we didn't start this thing out with like a perfect idea of what we were going to do. Once again, I made a decision of, hey, this is a shot you have right now. You might as well take it. You were like, look, this is the next step in life. May not have been the purest.
Right.
It wasn't the purest and most holy reason. Jesus didn't place us together,
right.
and
that came much later as I was thinking about it.
And all
right,
that. No.
I didn't get a vision. It wasn't anything
way
like that.
more sort of practical and operational. Than that, right? It wasn't like the romantic whatever love story. I didn't come pull you out of a tower.
He didn't.
None of that. No.
He definitely did
no. Right, but so it's funny. I don't know how many young men and women are willing to go through that process.
Yeah.
Right? Because the benefit that we have today is that there was a maturity process that we went through both while dating, early marriage, into marriage that kind of led us to where we are today.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if people have the patience.
But that kind of goes to, like you said, the pressure of choosing right.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to make sure that I'm choosing the right person. So I'm sure, like, if we were to ask our children, like, okay, what are you waiting for? They're like, in their minds, they're like, I haven't met the right person.
Yeah.
Yet. And I know I'm like always guilty of putting pressure. On not just my kids, but my two beautiful daughters, Dominique and Autumn.
Right.
I'm always like, so.
Right.
What you doing? And that's unfair to them.
It is.
And like you said, sometimes society, and I'm telling on myself because I think society puts pressure on women more so than men. To get married.
Yeah.
Because remember, like, even if you go like in biblical days, man, if you were
if you were barren, you were considered cursed, right?
Even if you were old and not married, you had to get married by the time you were a teenager.
Yeah, by 15 or 16, right? Or else you're considered an old maid.
Right. Nobody wants you.
Yeah. And it is. There's a lot of societal pressure. I know for our biological kids, there's for me, from a practical standpoint, now that I've got gray hairs and I have peers that are grandfathers, right?
Yes.
I'm looking forward to the grandfather stage, right? So, I may apply pressure, unknowingly, right? Or whatever that, because I want to speed that up. So I have to watch myself there. I don't necessarily pressure young men, but I do sometimes when I talk to young ladies, because I'm older and I see the value of getting married at a young age. How you get benefits, how when you get into your 50s and you have grandchildren, you can still play with them, right? You're not on a cane. Yeah. You can still run to some degree, not for very long, but you can still do some strenuous things. You can still go to Disneyland, Disney World, and walk around. You can still enjoy life. And the biggest thing is you get to enjoy, I know we enjoy relationships with our children as adults.
Do. Yeah.
Right? So having a son that's almost 30 years old, a daughter that's in her mid-20s, it's like, so we can hang out and discuss adult matters with them, even though they're our kids and there's still respect there, right? They're adults, right? And so doesn't mean they stop learning from us, doesn't mean they don't come to us for advice, all that kind of stuff. But still, you can have a different level of relationship, and getting married older and having children older, you're not afforded as much time to do those types of things, because there's so much of a gap in age, I didn't have that with my father. My father was an older guy, right? Yeah.
Because I also think too, like you said, it's the pressure of getting married, but I think there's also pressure in staying married.
Yeah.
Sometimes you you marry the wrong person.
You do. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so but once again, there's pressure in that because it's like, divorce is, it, I don't want to say it's a scarlet letter, but it's such a negative thing
Yeah.
that we don't give people room to, to really, like you said, it goes back to the fear of divorce.
Well, yeah.
Man, I failed. This didn't work.
Yeah.
And so then it's hard for you to see a space where you can rebound and now go back to having a healthy relationship with somebody.
Well, if you notice, there's a natural sort of push-pull tension
Yeah.
between choosing right and fear of divorce,
Yeah.
right? Because
yeah,
you want
absolutely.
to choose right because you don't want to get into something where you get divorced, right? But then because you fear divorce, you're very picky about choosing right. So it creates this
there's
tension.
anxiety. Yeah.
It creates this tension that's hard to balance, right? Because now you're looking for all the signs that says they're not there. You're not given an opportunity for potential and growth, right? You got flags and keywords that you use to filter out things, and so it creates a very complex environment for finding a mate.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, not just for finding a mate, but like you said, staying with a mate.
Yeah.
And so that's, I feel like throughout this series, those are some of the topics we're gonna talk about. Like because it's very complex.
It's very complex.
Like you said, when we look at the different trends of what's going on, like you said, we see people getting married, we see people getting divorced, and some of them are surprising.
Yeah, and it's overwhelmingly affecting the people of God, right?
Yeah,
those of us that profess
absolutely.
Christianity, right? Those of us that believe we have covenant, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in an episode.
Yeah. And well, not just the episode. I think that's going to be a theme that we're going to have through this. So we'd like to ask you, what's your opinion about marriage? Is it outdated? Is there not return on investment there? The question we want to leave on your mind: is there a difference between the legal contract of marriage and the spiritual covenant of marriage? It's kind of a trick. It's a trick question. Yeah, and I think when you start to unpack those two different things, you could start to see how people may be viewing the covenant of marriage through the wrong lens. But we'll save that for a future episode.
What I'm also excited about, like we had talked about, is our special guest that we're going to be having on.
Absolutely.
We're going to, have some ladies come on and talk about choosing right. Why are you waiting? So it'll be some single ladies coming on, and we'll have an opportunity to talk to them. We might even,
right.
maybe to get some young men to, to come and talk about why they're still single.
So you heard that. All the single ladies, put your hands up. You single ladies. So we're going to have some guests on that'll talk about the whole process of choosing, why they've chose not to choose.
Right, absolutely.
Why there's certain ones looking to choose. Yeah. There's ones that have tried to choose and it didn't work out. We're going to get a bunch of different perspective on this thing. And we're going to wrap this whole thing, because remember, we are a faith-based channel. We're a Christian-based ministry. And so we're going to wrap this thing up in what does God and what does the kingdom think about all of these factors that we have to live in today. So this series is going to be important. So is marriage still worth it? Right?
Absolutely. I think so.
I think it is. But we're going to discover that over the next few weeks.
Absolutely, yes.
So is that all we got today?
That's all we got for today.
Well, we love you, Safehouse. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like the video, share this video with people you know and love so they can start to benefit of this series that we're doing about is marriage worth it? Hit the bell for notifications so you know when we're publishing content. And most of all, give us a comment below. Tell us how you feel about this topic. Is marriage still worth it?
Yeah.
Have you been through something and say, I'm not going back? Are you single and choosing not to? Are you in a marriage right now and you're trying to figure out whether or not we hang on, right?
Because all of it is hard.
It is.
Yeah.
But this is a place of discovery, and we want to discover with you.
Absolutely. We love you guys.
We love you. So with that, we are saying peace.